Document Part 1. Nathan Brooks sat at his desk in the small, dimly lit office of a top-secret government facility hidden deep in the Rocky Mountains. The room was quiet, except for the faint hum of computers and the occasional click of a keyboard. Outside, snow blanketed the ground, muffling any sound that might come from the world beyond the thick concrete walls. But Nathan wasn't paying attention to the view. His eyes were glued to the screen in front of him, where lines of data scrolled past faster than most people could read. Nathan wasn't like most people. He had spent years studying the stars, trying to understand what lay beyond Earth's atmosphere. It was a job he loved, but tonight it felt more like a burden. The numbers on the screen told a story he didn't want to believe. Somewhere out there, far beyond the reaches of human exploration, something or someone was coming. And they weren't just passing by, Nate, Emily Dawson said as she stepped into the room, her voice cutting through the silence. She carried a tablet under one arm and looked just as tired as Nathan felt. Her dark hair was pulled back into a messy ponytail, and her glasses sat slightly crooked on her nose. "You've been staring at that thing for hours. What did you find?" Nathan leaned back in his chair and rubbed his temples. "It's not good, Em. Look at this." He pointed to a cluster of data points on the screen. "These signals, they're not random. They're organized, intelligent." Emily frowned and moved closer, setting her tablet down on the desk. She studied the information for a moment before nodding slowly. "You're right, this isn't natural. But where is it coming from?" "That's the problem," Nathan replied. "It's coming from everywhere, nowhere. Whoever sent these messages knows how to cover their tracks. But I managed to isolate one specific transmission." He tapped a few keys, and a new window popped up. It showed a series of strange symbols that looked almost like a language, though neither of them recognized it. Emily crossed her arms. "Aliens. It's possible," Nathan admitted. "But there's more. These signals aren't just random broadcasts. They're responding to something we've been doing." "What do you mean?" Emily asked, her brow furrowing. Nathan hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "For years, humanity has been sending out signals into space. Radio waves, mostly. Harmless stuff. Music, images, basic math equations. All designed to show whoever might be listening that we're intelligent life forms. But recently, we started including something else. Something bigger." Emily's eyes widened. "You don't mean—" "Exactly," Nathan interrupted. "We've been showing off. Not intentionally, maybe, but still. Some of our transmissions included hints about advanced technology. Things like quantum computing, artificial intelligence, even experimental energy sources. At first, it seemed harmless. A way to say, hey, look how far we've come. But now," he trailed off, shaking his head. "Now what?" Emily pressed, her voice tense. "Now it looks like someone took notice," Nathan finished. "Whoever sent these signals, they're tracking us. And based on the trajectory of the response, they're heading straight for Earth." The room fell silent as the weight of Nathan's words sank in. Emily sank into the chair next to him, staring at the screen, as if hoping the symbols would suddenly make sense. "How long do we have?" she finally asked. "A few months, maybe." "Less," Nathan said grimly. "They're moving fast. Faster than anything we've ever seen." Emily let out a shaky breath. "Does General Harris know about this?" Nathan nodded. "I sent him a report earlier today. He wants us to present our findings tomorrow morning. But honestly, Em, I don't know what we can do. If these aliens are as advanced as they seem, we'll figure it out," Emily said, firmly, though her voice wavered slightly. "We always do." Nathan wished he could share her optimism, but doubt gnawed at him. Humanity had faced threats before: wars, pandemics, environmental disasters, but nothing like this. For the first time in history, the danger wasn't coming from within. It was coming from the stars. The next morning, Nathan and Emily stood in a large conference room, surrounded by military personnel and government officials. At the head of the table sat General Harris, a stern man with sharp features and an even sharper gaze. He listened intently as Nathan explained the situation, occasionally jotting notes on a pad of paper. When Nathan finished, the room was eerily quiet. Finally, General Harris spoke. "So let me get this straight. You're telling me that because of our own carelessness, we've attracted the attention of an alien race and now they're on their way here?" "Yes, sir," Nathan confirmed. "And based on the patterns in their transmissions, they don't seem friendly." General Harris leaned back in his chair, his expression unreadable. "What options do we have for defense?" Nathan glanced at Emily, who gave him a slight nod. "There's Project Gaia." The general raised an eyebrow. "Gaia, that old relic. I thought that program was abandoned decades ago." "It was," Emily interjected, "but it's still operational, at least partially. With some work, we might be able to reactivate it." "And what exactly does Gaia do?" one of the officials asked skeptically. "It harnesses Earth's natural forces," Nathan explained. "Volcanoes, storms, tectonic activity, it turns them into weapons. Back when it was developed, the idea was to create a system so powerful that no enemy would dare attack us. But it was deemed too dangerous, too unpredictable, so it was shut down. But if we're facing an invasion," another official began. "It might be our only chance," Nathan finished. General Harris stared at the two scientists for a long moment before nodding slowly. "Do it. Get Gaia online. But remember this: if those aliens arrive and we can't stop them, the blood will be on all of our hands." As Nathan and Emily left the conference room, the gravity of the task ahead weighed heavily on them. They had warned humanity about the risks of reaching out to the stars. Now, Earth's fury was about to be unleashed. Whether it would save them or destroy them remained to be seen. Document Part 2. Days turned into weeks as the world braced for what was coming. News of the alien fleet spread quickly, though the details were kept vague to avoid widespread panic. Governments scrambled to prepare, but no one knew exactly how to defend against an enemy that could cross light years in the blink of an eye. Nathan Brooks and Emily Dawson worked tirelessly in the underground facility, poring over old blueprints and dusty manuals to bring Project Gaia back to life. It was slow, grueling work, and every delay felt like a step closer to disaster. Meanwhile, high above Earth, the Krylosian fleet loomed ominously in orbit. Their ships were massive, sleek structures that glinted coldly in the sunlight. To anyone watching from below, they looked unstoppable, and perhaps they were. But the Krylosians weren't silent invaders. They wanted humanity to know they were. There it started with a signal transmitted directly into every communication device on the planet. Televisions flickered to life, radios crackled, and smartphones buzzed simultaneously. The message played in dozens of languages, each translation eerily perfect. At first, people thought it was some kind of prank or malfunction. Then they saw the face. Commander Zorak appeared on screens worldwide, his sharp features framed by a helmet that seemed to shimmer with an otherworldly light. His eyes, dark and piercing, locked onto the camera as if he could see through it into the souls of everyone watching. Behind him, the interior of the Krylosian ship was visible smooth, metallic walls lined with strange symbols that pulsed faintly, as if alive. "People of Earth," Zorak began, his voice deep and commanding, yet strangely calm. "You have deceived us. For years, your species has sent signals into the void, portraying yourselves as primitive beings incapable of defending yourselves. Yet we now know this is not true. You possess technologies far beyond what you have revealed. This deception will not be tolerated." The room fell silent wherever the message played. In living rooms, offices, and public squares, people froze, unsure of what to make of the words. Rachel Monroe, a journalist based in Chicago, watched the broadcast from her cramped apartment. She had been following the story closely since rumors of alien contact began circulating, but nothing could have prepared her for this. Her heart raced as she grabbed her recorder and started dictating notes. "We demand full disclosure of your technological advancements," Zora continued. "Failure to comply will result in consequences. You have 24 hours to surrender. Use this time wisely." The screen went black, leaving only static behind. For a moment, the world held its breath. Then chaos erupted. In New York City, crowds gathered in Times Square, staring up at the giant digital billboards that replayed the message on loop. Some shouted in fear, others argued about what it meant, and a few simply stood frozen, unable to process what they had just witnessed. Across the globe, similar scenes unfolded. In Tokyo, families huddled around televisions, praying it was all a hoax. In London, politicians debated emergency measures while protesters took to the streets, demanding answers. Rachel knew she couldn't stay idle. Grabbing her coat and camera, she headed out into the city to document the reaction. As she walked through the bustling streets, she noticed groups of people clustered around newsstands and cafes, discussing the aliens' ultimatum. One man, clutching a newspaper, muttered loudly, "They're bluffing. They wouldn't dare attack us." A woman nearby shook her head. "You don't know that. Look at their ships. They're huge." Rachel approached them cautiously. "Excuse me," she said, holding up her microphone. "Do you mind if I ask what you think about the message?" The man hesitated, but nodded. "Sure. I mean, it's crazy, right? Aliens? Really? But if it's true, well, maybe we should listen to them." "What choice do we have?" the woman chimed in, her voice trembling. "I don't care what they want. We can't let them win. If we give them what they're asking for, who knows what they'll do next." Rachel thanked them and moved on, capturing snippets of conversations. As she went, everywhere she looked, fear and uncertainty hung heavy in the air. But amidst the panic, something else caught her attention, a flyer pinned to a bulletin board outside a coffee shop. It read, Project Gaia, Humanity's Last Hope. Her curiosity piqued. Rachel tore the flyer down and studied it closely. The text was brief, mentioning an abandoned defense system buried beneath the Earth's surface. According to the flyer, Gaia was designed to harness natural forces as weapons, a last-ditch effort to protect the planet. Intrigued, Rachel decided to dig deeper. Back at her apartment, she spent hours combing through old articles, leaked documents, and classified reports. Slowly, a picture began to emerge. Decades ago, during the height of the Cold War, scientists had proposed creating a weapon so powerful that it could deter any potential invader. Using advanced technology, they planned to manipulate volcanic eruptions, hurricanes, and even earthquakes to create devastating effects. However, concerns about safety and ethics led to the project being shelved before it could ever be tested. Rachel realized she might be onto something big. If Gaia really existed, and if it could be reactivated, could change everything. Determined to uncover the truth, she reached out to her contacts within the government, hoping someone would confirm her suspicions. After several dead ends, she finally got a lead. A former engineer named Alan Grant had worked on the original project. Though retired, he still lived nearby. The next morning, Rachel drove to a quiet suburban neighborhood where Alan Grant resided. His house was modest, with a neatly trimmed lawn and flower beds lining the driveway. When she knocked on the door, an elderly man answered. He had gray hair, glasses perched on the edge of his nose, and a warm smile that softened his otherwise serious demeanor. "Mr. Grant?" Rachel asked, tentatively. "I'm Rachel Monroe, a journalist. I was wondering if I could speak with you about Project Gaia." For a moment, Alan looked startled. Then his expression hardened. "That's ancient history," he said gruffly. "Why are you digging it up now?" Because I think it matters, Rachel replied earnestly. There are rumors that Gaia might be our only chance against, well, whatever's coming. Alan sighed and stepped aside, motioning for her to come in. Inside, the house smelled faintly of coffee and old books. He led her to a small study, filled with shelves crammed with papers and binders. Sitting down at his desk, he studied her for a long moment before speaking. You're right, he admitted. Gaia exists, or at least it did. Back then, we thought we were building something incredible, something that could protect us from anything. But the risks, they were too great. Harnessing Earth's power isn't something you can control easily. One wrong move, and you could destroy entire cities. Rachel leaned forward, her pen poised over her notebook. So why didn't you shut it down completely? Why leave it intact? We tried, Alan said grimly. But bureaucracy got in the way. Some officials argued that dismantling it entirely would be too costly. Others believed it might still serve a purpose someday. So instead of destroying it, they sealed it off and hoped no one would ever find it again. And now? Rachel prompted. Alan shook his head. Now it's in the hands of people who may not understand the dangers. If they activate it without knowing what they're doing. He trailed off, his voice heavy with unspoken fears. Rachel thanked him for his time and left the house with more questions than answers. On her drive back to the city, she couldn't shake the feeling that Gaia wasn't just a relic of the past, it was a ticking time bomb waiting to explode. Whether it would save humanity or doom, it remained to be seen. As night fell, Rachel sat at her desk, typing furiously. She knew she had to share what she'd learned, but how much could she reveal without causing mass hysteria? In the end, she settled on a carefully worded article, hinting at the existence of Gaia without giving away too many details. By morning, her story was everywhere, sparking debates and fueling conspiracy theories. In the underground facility, Nathan and Emily watched as the news broke. They exchanged worried glances, both knowing that the clock was ticking louder than ever. The Krylosians weren't going to wait forever, and when they acted, Earth would need to be ready, if it meant unleashing its own fury. Document, Part 3. The days following Rachel's article were a whirlwind of activity. Governments around the world scrambled to respond to the growing public outcry. People demanded answers, and protests erupted in major cities, with crowds chanting slogans like "No surrender" and "Protect our planet." Military leaders held emergency meetings, debating whether to acknowledge the existence of Project Gaia or continue denying it altogether. In the underground facility where Nathan Brooks and Emily Dawson worked, tension hung thick in the air. General Harris called an urgent meeting early one morning. Nathan and Emily joined him in a secure conference room, along with a handful of high-ranking officials. The general wasted no time getting to the point. "Thanks to that journalist," he said, glaring at no one in particular. "The cat's out of the bag. Half the planet knows about Gaia, nor at least thinks they do. We need to decide how much we're willing to risk." Nathan shifted uncomfortably in his seat. He had mixed feelings about Rachel's expose. On one hand, transparency might rally support for their efforts. On the other hand, revealing too much could lead to panic or worse, sabotage. "Sir," he began cautiously, "if we don't give people some reassurance, they'll lose faith in us completely. But we also can't afford to let our enemies know exactly what we're capable of." Emily nodded in agreement. "We should focus on repairing Gaia first. Once it's operational, we can figure out what to tell the public. Until then, every second counts." General Harris rubbed his temples, clearly torn. Finally, he sighed. "Fine, keep working on Gaia, but keep it quiet. I'll handle the press. Just make sure you get that system online as soon as possible." With that, the meeting adjourned, and Nathan and Emily returned to the lab. The facility was a maze of corridors and rooms filled with outdated equipment and dusty manuals. It felt more like stepping into a museum than a cutting-edge research center. Yet despite its age, the technology housed within was anything but primitive. Project Gaia had been designed decades ago by some of the brightest minds of the time. Its purpose was simple, yet terrifying: to harness Earth's natural forces, volcanic eruptions, hurricanes, tectonic shifts, and turn them into weapons. The idea was both brilliant and horrifying. If successful, it would allow humanity to defend itself against any invader, but if something went wrong, the consequences could be catastrophic. For days, Nathan and Emily pored over schematics and ran simulations, trying to piece together how the system worked. They encountered countless obstacles: malfunctioning circuits, corrupted data files, and components so old they crumbled at the slightest touch. Each setback tested their patience, but neither of them gave up. They knew failure wasn't an option. One evening, as they worked late into the night, Emily noticed something unusual in the system logs. A series of commands had been entered recently, though neither she nor Nathan remembered authorizing them. "Nate," she said, her voice tinged with alarm, "did you run these diagnostics?" Nathan frowned and leaned over her shoulder to look at the screen. "No, I didn't. Did anyone else access this terminal?" Emily shook her head. "Not unless someone got past security without us noticing." A chill ran down Nathan's spine. Someone or something had tampered with the system. Whether it was an inside job or external interference, they couldn't say for sure. But one thing was certain: they weren't alone anymore. Before they could investigate further, alarms blared throughout the facility. Red lights flashed, casting eerie shadows on the walls. "What's happening?" Emily shouted over the noise. Nathan sprinted to the main control panel, his fingers flying across the keyboard. "It's the Cryolosians," he exclaimed. "They've breached our satellites." On the monitors, images of Earth appeared, overlaid with blinking red dots, indicating areas targeted by the alien fleet. Cities lit up like pinpoints on a map, each one marked for destruction. Panic gripped Nathan as he realized the aliens weren't just observing, they were probing Earth's defenses. "They're testing us," Emily said grimly, "seeing how we'll react." General Harris burst into the room moments later, his face pale but determined. "Report," he barked. "They're scanning for weak points," Nathan explained. "If we don't act fast, they'll find them and exploit them." Harris clenched his jaw. "How close are you to activating Gaia?" "Close," Emily replied, "but not close enough. If we tried to use it now, we could trigger a meltdown." "We don't have a choice," Harris snapped. "Do whatever it takes to get it running now." As the general stormed out, Nathan turned to Emily. "Can we do it? Safely, I mean." Emily hesitated, weighing the risks. "Maybe, but it's going to take everything we've got." Together, they dove back into their work, moving faster than ever before. Hours passed in a blur of calculations, adjustments, and last-minute fixes. Finally, just as dawn broke outside, Emily let out a triumphant shout. "It's ready." Nathan double-checked the readings, his heart pounding. Everything seemed stable for now. "Let's hope this works," he muttered. At General Harris's command, they initiated the first test. Deep beneath the surface, massive machines roared to life, drawing energy from Earth's core. Above ground, the effects were immediate and uninspiring. Thunderclouds gathered in clear skies, lightning crackling across vast distances. Volcanoes dormant for centuries rumbled ominously, spewing ash and smoke into the atmosphere. Tectonic plates shifted, causing minor earthquakes in remote regions. The Cryolosians reacted instantly. Their scout ships descended lower, attempting to analyze the sudden surge in activity. For a moment, it looked like Gaia might actually hold them off. But then came the retaliation. Alien drones swarmed toward the facility, firing beams of energy that tore through the landscape. Explosions rocked the ground, sending debris flying in all directions. Inside, Nathan and Emily braced themselves as the building shook violently. "We've got to shut it down," Nathan yelled, fearing they'd pushed the system too far. "No," Emily shouted back. "If we stop now, they'll overwhelm us. Trust me." Her words gave him pause. Against his better judgment, he nodded. "All right. But if this goes sideways—" "It won't," she interrupted firmly. "We've come too far to fail." Outside, the battle intensified. Fighter jets scrambled to intercept the alien ships, their missiles streaking through the sky like fireworks. Civilians fled in terror, abandoning homes and businesses as chaos engulfed the area. Rachel Monroe, who had been investigating nearby when the attack began, found herself caught in the crossfire. She ducked behind a crumbling wall, clutching her camera tightly. Despite the danger, she couldn't tear her eyes away from the spectacle unfolding before her through the smoke and flames. She saw flashes of green, like Gaia's power, manifesting in ways no one had anticipated. It was beautiful and terrifying all at once. As another explosion rocked the ground, Rachel whispered to herself, "This is it. This is how the world ends or begins again." Back in the facility, Nathan and Emily monitored the situation anxiously. The strain on the system was immense, but somehow it held together. Slowly, the tide began to turn. The Krylosian drones faltered, their shields overwhelmed by the sheer force of Earth's fury. One by one, they fell from the sky, crashing into the ground below. When the dust finally settled, silence reigned. Exhausted but victorious, Nathan and Emily collapsed into chairs, staring at the monitors in disbelief. They had done the impossible. They had fought back. But as the adrenaline faded, reality set in. This was only the beginning. In the aftermath, Rachel stood amidst the wreckage, filming the devastation. Her hands trembled as she recorded her thoughts. "Today, humanity unleashed a power unlike anything we've ever seen," she said, her voice steady despite the turmoil around her. "Whether it will save us or destroy us remains to be seen. But one thing is clear, we warned them, we were holding back. Now, Earth's fury has been unleashed." Document Part 4. The victory was short-lived. While the initial test of Project Gaia had managed to drive back the Krylosian scout ships, the cost of activating the system was becoming painfully clear. Earth itself seemed grown under the strain. Volcanoes that had been quiet for centuries continued to spew ash into the atmosphere, darkening skies and choking off sunlight. Rivers overflowed their banks due to sudden torrential rains, flooding towns and displacing thousands of people. In some areas, earthquakes rattled buildings already weakened by the earlier chaos, leaving entire neighborhoods in ruins. Rachel Monroe wandered through one such devastated town, her camera slung over her shoulder. She had spent the last 2 days documenting the aftermath of Gaia's activation, scenes of destruction, so vast they defied belief. Families huddled together in makeshift shelters, their faces etched with exhaustion and despair. Emergency workers scrambled to provide food and medical aid, but resources were stretched thin. Everywhere Rachel looked, she saw signs of humanity struggling to hold on. As she walked past a group of volunteers handing out bottled water, a young boy tugged at her sleeve. His clothes were dirty, his face streaked with dirt, but his eyes shone with curiosity. "Are the aliens gone?" he asked hopefully. Rachel knelt down to meet his gaze. "I don't know," she admitted softly, "but we're still fighting." The boy nodded solemnly, as if understanding far more than his years should allow. Rachel stood up and moved away, feeling a lump rise in her throat. These were the moments that made her job unbearable, the innocent questions, the unspoken fears. Humanity wasn't just battling an alien threat, it was grappling with its own survival. Meanwhile, Nathan Brooks and Emily Dawson faced challenges of their own. Though they had successfully activated Gaia, keeping it operational was proving far more difficult than anticipated. The system required constant monitoring and adjustments to prevent it from spiraling out of control. Every hour brought new problems: overheating, components power surges, and glitches that threatened to shut the whole thing down. Nathan sat slumped in front of a bank of monitors, his eyes bloodshot from lack of sleep. Beside him, Emily typed furiously, trying to stabilize yet another malfunction. "We can't keep this up forever," Nathan muttered. "Every time we fix one issue, 3 more pop up." Emily didn't respond immediately, her focus locked on the screen. Finally, she leaned back in her chair and sighed. "I know, but what choice do we have? If we let Gaia fail now, the Krylosians will come back stronger and, next time, we might not be able to stop them." Nathan ran a hand through his disheveled hair. "At what cost, though? Look at what we've already done. Cities are underwater, crops are dying, and millions of people are homeless. How many more sacrifices are we willing to make?" Emily hesitated, unsure how to answer. She wanted to believe they were doing the right thing, but doubt gnawed at her. Deep down, she knew Nathan was right. They were playing with forces beyond human comprehension, and the consequences could be catastrophic. Still, she couldn't bring herself to give up, not when there was even a slim chance of success. Above ground, world leaders convened in Geneva for an emergency summit. Representatives from every nation gathered around a large table, their expressions grim. At the head of the room stood General Harris, who briefed them on the current situation. "Project Gaia has proven effective against the Krylosians," he began, "but sustaining it is putting immense pressure on our planet. We need a long-term strategy, or else we risk losing everything." A representative from India spoke up. "First, what about diplomacy? Have we tried negotiating with them?" Harris shook his head. "Negotiations won't work. Commander Zorak made that clear during his broadcast. He sees us as deceitful and unworthy of trust. To him, surrender is the only acceptable outcome." "And what happens if we refuse?" asked a European delegate. "Then we fight," Harris replied bluntly. "But we need unity. If we start turning on each other, we'll lose before the real battle even begins." The room erupted into heated debate. Some argued for immediate disarmament of Gaia, fearing its continued use would destroy Earth faster than any alien invasion ever could. Others insisted it was their best and only hope for survival. Amid the chaos, Rachel watched silently. From the sidelines, having been granted rare access to cover the event, her presence didn't go unnoticed. As the arguments grew louder, a Chinese official turned to her. "You're the journalist who wrote about Gaia, aren't you? The one stirring up trouble." Rachel straightened, meeting his gaze without flinching. "I'm just reporting the facts," she said calmly. "People deserve to know what's happening." The official scoffed. "And what good does that do? You're spreading panic instead of solutions." Before Rachel could respond, another voice cut in. It belonged to Dr. Alan Grant, the retired engineer who had worked on the original Gaia project. He had arrived late to the summit, summoned by General Harris after Rachel's expose brought renewed attention to his expertise. Now, standing at the edge of the room, he addressed the assembly. "Panic isn't the problem here," he said firmly. "Ignorance is. If you want to save this planet, you need to understand what you're dealing with. Gaia isn't just a weapon, it's a gamble, and unless you're prepared to accept the risks, you shouldn't play the game." His words silenced the room. For a moment, everyone stared at him, unsure how to react. Then, a French diplomat broke the tension. "So what do you suggest, Dr. Grant? That we abandon Gaia entirely?" "No," Alan replied. "But I do suggest caution. Right now, you're treating Gaia like a miracle cure. It's not. It's a desperate measure, last resort. If you rely on it too heavily, you'll burn yourselves out before the aliens even strike again." General Harris stepped forward, his expression unreadable. "Dr. Grant makes a valid point, but we also can't afford to sit idly by while the Krylosians regroup. What we need is balance. A way to use Gaia strategically without destroying ourselves in the process." The discussion continued late into the night, with no clear resolution in sight. By the time Rachel left the building, she felt drained, but oddly inspired. Despite the disagreements, she sensed a glimmer of hope, a fragile thread of cooperation holding the fractured world together. Back at the underground facility, Nathan and Emily received updates from the summit via encrypted messages. Neither of them liked what they heard. "They're arguing over who gets control of Gaia," Nathan said bitterly. "Like it's some kind of prize." "It's politics," Emily replied. "People always fight over power, especially when they're scared." "Well, maybe they should focus less on controlling it and more on fixing it," Nathan snapped. "Because if they don't, none of this will matter anyway." His frustration was understandable, but Emily knew it wouldn't help. "We'll figure it out," she said gently. "We have to." Hours later, as dawn broke over the horizon, Nathan found himself staring at a monitor displaying live satellite footage of Earth. The planet looked battered and bruised, its beauty marred by scars inflicted both by nature and humanity. Yet despite everything, it still turned, still breathed. Nathan felt a pang of guilt and determination. They had warned the Krylosians they were holding back. Now, Earth's fury had been unleashed. Whether it would protect or destroy remained to be seen. But one thing was certain, they couldn't turn back now. Document Part 5. The underground facility buzzed with activity as Nathan Brooks and Emily Dawson worked tirelessly to keep Project Gaia operational. The system was like a living thing, unpredictable, temperamental, and dangerously powerful. Every hour brought new challenges, from overheating circuits to sudden power surges that threatened to fry the entire network. Despite their best efforts, the strain on both the machinery and themselves was becoming unbearable. Nathan sat hunched over a workstation, his fingers flying across the keyboard as he tried to stabilize a critical subroutine. His face was pale, dark circles underlining his tired eyes. Beside him, Emily adjusted dials and monitored readouts, her movements quick but deliberate. Neither of them had slept properly in days, surviving on coffee and adrenaline alone. The weight of responsibility pressed down on them, knowing that any mistake could spell disaster for Earth. "We're running out of time," Nathan muttered, glancing at the clock on the wall. "These systems weren't designed to run nonstop like this. If we don't find a way to ease the load, something's going to give on soon." Emily nodded grimly. "I know, but what choice do we have? Shutting it down now would leave us defenseless. The Krylosians are still out there, watching, waiting. They'll strike again if they think we've weakened." Nathan sighed, rubbing his temples. "I just wish we had more support, more resources. This isn't a job for two people." As if on cue, General Harris entered the room, his boots echoing against the metal floor. He carried a tablet under one arm and wore an expression that brooked no argument. "Status report," he barked, cutting straight to the point. "Holding steady for now," Emily replied, gesturing toward the monitors. "But the system's showing signs of wear. We've patched up most of the major issues, but it's only a matter of time before something gives." Harris frowned, studying the screens intently. "You said you needed reinforcements. I've arranged for additional engineers to assist you. They'll arrive within the hour." Nathan raised an eyebrow. "Engineers? From where?" "Top brass pulled them from other projects," Harris explained. "They're the best we've got. Use them wisely." Though grateful for the help, Nathan couldn't shake the feeling that bringing outsiders into the fold might complicate things further. Still, they didn't have the luxury of turning down assistance. "We'll take all the help we can get," he said finally. As the general left, Emily turned to Nathan. "Do you trust them?" "I don't have a choice," Nathan admitted, "but I'll keep an eye on them, just in case." Meanwhile, Rachel Monroe continued her investigation, determined to uncover the full truth about Project Gaia. Her article had sparked global interest, but she knew there was more to the story details. hidden behind layers of secrecy and bureaucracy. She spent hours poring over leaked documents, interviewing whistleblowers, and piecing together fragments of information. One evening, while sifting through files in her cramped apartment, Rachel stumbled upon something unusual, a series of classified memos discussing contingency plans in case Gaia failed. Among them was a chilling directive labeled Protocol Omega, though heavily redacted. The memo hinted at extreme measures, including the potential evacuation of key cities and the establishment of underground bunkers for select populations. Rachel's stomach churned as she read the words. It wasn't just about saving humanity. It was about choosing who deserved to survive. She grabbed her phone and called Alan Grant, hoping he could shed light on the document. "Alan, it's Rachel," she said when he answered. "I need your help. Have you ever heard of Protocol Omega?" There was a long pause on the other end. "Where did you hear that name?" Alan asked cautiously. "It doesn't matter," Rachel replied. "What does it mean?" Another pause, longer this time. Finally, Alan sighed. "It means Plan B. If Gaia fails or worse, if it backfires, they'll abandon large parts of the planet. Only certain areas will be deemed salvageable. Everyone else, well, let's just say they won't prioritize evacuations." Rachel felt a chill run down her spine. "That's insane. You're talking about leaving billions of people to die." "I know," Alan said quietly. "But when you're dealing with threats like this, morality often takes a back seat to survival. That's why I warned you earlier. Gaia isn't just a weapon. It's a gamble, and not everyone is willing to bet on it." Rachel thanked him and hung up, her mind racing. She knew she had to share this information, but how? Publishing it outright could cause mass panic, yet withholding it felt wrong. In the end, she decided to write a follow-up piece, carefully framing the issue without revealing too much. Her goal wasn't to incite fear, it was to push for accountability. The effects of Gaia's activation grew more severe by the day. Entire regions were plunged into darkness as ash clouds blocked sunlight, crippling agriculture and causing food shortages. Rivers overflowed their banks, flooding towns and displacing thousands. In some places, tremors rattled the earth constantly, forcing residents to flee their homes. The natural world seemed to rebel against humanity's interference, lashing out in ways no one could have predicted. In New York City, Rachel witnessed the chaos firsthand. Streets once bustling with life were now eerily quiet, littered with debris and abandoned cars. Emergency sirens wailed in the distance, blending with the sound of distant thunder. People lined up for hours outside distribution centers, hoping to receive meager rations of water and canned goods. Children clung to their parents, wide-eyed and scared, as soldiers patrolled the streets. Trying to maintain order, Rachel approached a woman standing in line, her arms wrapped around a small child. "Excuse me," Rachel said gently. "Can I ask how you're holding up?" The woman looked at her warily before nodding. "We're doing what we can," she replied. "But it's hard. No electricity, no heat, barely enough food to go around, and the earthquakes, they never stop. It's like the ground itself is angry." Rachel nodded sympathetically. "Do you think using Gaia was worth it?" The woman hesitated, then shrugged. "I don't know. Maybe it saved us from those aliens. Or maybe it made things worse. Either way, we're stuck here, trying to survive." Her words lingered in Rachel's mind as she walked away. Survival, that was the crux of it all. Humanity had always been resilient, finding ways to adapt and endure even in the face of unimaginable hardship. But this was different. This wasn't just about rebuilding after a storm or recovering from a war. This was about confronting a threat unlike anything Earth had ever faced, and wondering whether the cure was worse than the disease. Back at the facility, the newly arrived engineers began assisting Nathan and Emily. At first, progress seemed promising. With extra hands, they managed to stabilize several critical systems and reduce the strain on Gaia's core. But tensions quickly arose as disagreements flared over how best to proceed. Some of the engineers argued for pushing the system to its limits, believing maximum output was necessary to deter the Krylosians. Others, including Nathan, advocated for caution, warning that overloading Gaia could trigger catastrophic consequences. "You're being reckless," Nathan snapped during one heated exchange. "If we push too hard, we risk losing control entirely. And if we hold back, the aliens will crush us," countered one of the engineers, a man named Carter. "We can't afford to sec ourselves now." Emily stepped in before the argument escalated further. "Both of you have valid points," she said diplomatically, "but arguing isn't going to solve anything. Let's focus on finding a middle ground." Reluctantly, the group agreed to compromise, though the tension remained palpable. As they worked side by side, Nathan couldn't shake the feeling that time was slipping away. The Krylosians hadn't launched another attack yet, but it was only a matter of time. When they did, Earth needed to be ready, or risk annihilation, by the end of the day. Exhaustion weighed heavily on everyone. Nathan leaned against a wall, staring blankly at the monitors. Emily joined him moments later, offering a weak smile. "We'll get through this," she said softly. "Somehow," Nathan nodded, though doubt lingered in his eyes. "Yeah," he murmured. "But at what cost?" Outside, the skies churned with unnatural storms, lightning illuminating the horizon. Earth's fury had been unleashed, a desperate bid for survival against an alien threat. Yet beneath the surface, cracks were forming not just in the planet's crust, but in humanity's resolve. Whether they could hold together long enough to see the battle through remained uncertain.